Who in the world would ever want to bake on a boat, no air conditioning, in the Sea of Cortez on a hot summer day? Well, me, for one. Hi there, I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, I'll share what you should consider when you're thinking about baking or cooking on board in the heat. And it just might not be as bad as you think. Now, today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Marine Depot Direct, your source for affordable, quality stainless steel hardware. Upgrade your boat with marine-grade stainless steel hardware and accessories like port lights, deck hatches, through hulls, and more. Make your boat restoration easy and affordable. Use coupon code BG15 for 15% off your first order. MarineDepotDirect.com. Affordable stainless for your boat. It's summer. And once again, I'm getting questions from those who know we cruised full-time in the Sea of Cortez, one of the hottest places I know, without air conditioning. Now we're in the Florida Keys and the Bahamas, which are just about as hot. I'm getting questions like, how do you cope with the heat and still have decent meals? Another one, do you even think about baking? Well, there's sort of two schools of thought. First of all, boats with good ventilation, such as both of ours, often tend to simply cook as usual, eat in the cockpit, and rely on wind scoops and fans to get the extra heat out of the boat fairly quickly. Boats without a number of opening ports and hatches, as well as those in rainy climates where they frequently can't open them, tend to go the route of trying to keep cooking heat out of the boat in the first place. Now, I'm one of the cook-as-usual types, but I'll admit that's because both K-Tall and Barefoot Gal have great ventilation possibilities. Now, we'd kind of looked into this. K-Tall was our first cruising boat, and we didn't know to really look at ventilation when evaluating boats. If you don't have your boat yet, when you do go to buy it, ventilation is a big thing to look for. But anyways, here's my strategies. First of all, we were primarily in an area with little rain and few bugs. So we left the hatches and ports open all the time, and we even removed the screens from them. Screens really cut down on airflow. A four-way wind scoop over the V-berth brought fresh, relatively cool air down below. There's a nice link to the best one of these that I know of, and at a cruiser-friendly price. That's in the show notes. Also, we acclimated ourselves to the heat, and the fact that we're from the Midwest with hot, humid summers probably helps. Now, this means staying active in the middle of the day year-round. As the weather warmed up day to day, we naturally adjust. Fans. Lots of fans. Now, I love the Caframo 12-volt fans, and also having a good exhaust fan that just slips into place with no ventilation required. Check the show notes for links to these so I can tell you exactly which ones I like. Another huge one is plenty of power. We use solar and we have lithium batteries. Having plenty of power to power the fans, the refrigerator for cold drinks, the water maker, all of that. Running your engine to supply power puts a lot of heat in the boat, so having alternate ways to provide power, whether solar, wind, or a generator, makes a tremendous difference. Contrary to many other boats, we do not use big canvas shades over the boat, other than our Bimini and Dodger. That is, I should say, K-Tall came with custom canvas shades, but after using them a few times, we felt that they cut down on the airflow so much that it was actually a negative. Two other factors probably play into our style. We've just recently started being grillers, so I've started doing more and more of that, but it's really natural for me to just cook on the stove. And I've always done a fair amount of baking, and as long as I could get out the extra heat out of the boat pretty quickly, I'm fine with using the oven. Maybe I don't cook as much stuff with really long, slow cooking as I do in the winter when I'm trying to warm up the boat, but I don't consciously think about not heating the boat up when planning meals. Basically, if it's hot out, we don't spend a lot of time below except to sleep. And with the wind scoop over the bed and 2 fans pointed at us, heat in the galley just never affected us. Since I only spent time near the galley when I was actually cooking, it didn't really bother me. Now, if you don't have great ventilation, or are in a spot with lots of rain, or where you have to use no-seam netting, which almost totally blocks airflow, the other option is to keep heat out of the boat in the first place. So let's talk a little bit about strategies for this. First, don't use your oven and use your stove as little as possible. Do things like making sun tea or cold brew tea instead of using boiling water. Have cold cereal for breakfast instead of cooking eggs and bacon, things like that. Grill your meats whenever you can. And really, sometimes your vegetables too. I still do that sometimes these days on really hot days. Have lots of salad meals, either meatless or using canned meats that don't need to be heated. Use thermos cooking for things like rice and beans. Make no-bake cookies and bars. Usually they take a few minutes on the stove, but that's much, much less time and less heat than ones that need to go in the oven. And if you really get a hankering for something baked, use a muffin tin to cut the baking time considerably. And think about whether you really need to preheat the oven. You'll find links to see more about that in the show notes. Also, you can use an Omnia stovetop oven to bake on the grill. So, figure out what works for you and hope that you manage to have good meals, even when it's hot out. Thanks for listening to the Boat Galley Podcast. Never miss an episode. Make sure you subscribe today.